Robert, I am so happy to see you. It's finally a new episode of the Underdog. Who is our underdog today, and what did he accomplish, or she?
Thanks for having me here again, Arne. It has been a while, but I'm glad to be back. And we are going to have a look at an exciting game from the World Open in Philadelphia. It was played at the end of June.
Huh.
And White in this game is a very strong grandmaster from Armenia, Zaven Andriasian, rated 2579. And he's playing against an American player, but with a typical Indian name
Uh-huh.
and a very good chess name, Vignesh Anand.
Anand is, yeah, that rings a bell every now and
Yeah,
then. Yeah.
that rings a bell. And well, the interesting thing is that it's let me just bring you quickly the first couple of moves, as we do get to see a Sicilian, and it's a Sicilian Najdorf variation. And the interesting thing is that I think a couple of years ago, should be around 10 years ago or so, the white player Andreasian published a book on this opening.
No freaking way. How funny is that? That
Yeah,
is
and that's
amazing.
always interesting to see what somebody is going to play against it,
Yeah.
against his own favorite opening.
Oh, wow.
It could be a very conscious decision that Vignesh thought that let's try it out to test him on his territory. But it can also be coincidence because the Najdorf is such a popular opening, and there are a lot
True.
of players who play the Najdorf with both colors.
So I just a quick story for this because Chris Ward, who I have the show The Monthly Dragon with, he's of course a Sicilian dragon expert. So we were talking about briefly like what happens if somebody plays the dragon against him. Yeah, well, he's aware. He says like, well, it makes him sometimes feel a bit uneasy because if that really happens, they probably have prepared something which is very out of the world, and so he's always very aware of if somebody plays the dragon against him, and so maybe this has also like some kind of psychological effect. It's always difficult, I guess.
Definitely. I think every chess player is struggling with that question, how to cope with your own. I mean, if you play an attacking opening yourself, you don't want to see the pieces coming towards your king, right? So,
True.
um, yeah, that's going to be interesting. And well, it's actually going to be a very interesting game. So I will show you what happened. Andreasian played h3, which is a very popular move, but was already played in his time by Bobby Fischer. But it's still one of the main ways of contesting the Najdorf. Black goes e5, knight b3, bishop e6, bishop e3, bishop e7. Very standard way of developing. And now queen f3 is played. It's also one of the many possibilities. Very often the queen can also go to d2. But on f3, there are some different ideas. Particularly, White would like to gain control over the d5 square, and one of the plans is to castle queenside next. And normally, Black would castle here himself or play knight bd7. The move played in the game is a bit unusual. The move knight c6. It's a developing move, but very often in these Najdorf structures where you have to fight for the control over the d5 square, it's better to have the knight on d7, from where it protects the other knight on f6, or the knight can even go to b6 later on to try to gain control over that square. White castled, Black played queen c7, g4, launching a sort of an attack, h6, king b1, all pretty standard, b5, and by the way, okay, I maybe I played it too fast a bit, but it should be clear that now castling kingside, since Black has played h6, it's not really attractive any longer. White seems to be much faster. So
yeah, you can break through. Yeah,
this is going to play a major role in this game. What is Black going to do with its own king? So he decides to go for the move b5, and now the move knight d5 is played. So jumping into to that nice square, attacking the queen.
Crucial square for the Sicilians so often.
Exactly. But now White transforms its advantage by no longer controlling the square with a piece, because after bishop takes, you do recapture with a pawn, attacking the knight on c6. And now the knight goes to b4, threatening a check on c2 with the queen. The move c3 is played. And now knight b takes d5.
So is this a simple pawn win is the question I have now.
Well, it's not really a simple pawn, in fact, because the queen and the rook are targeting the knight.
Yeah, and there's actually, it's a bit pinned, right?
Yeah, it's a bit pinned. So, for instance, after rook takes d5, if black would take and white recaptures, you do get a position with two minor pieces versus a rook.
Right.
But the key move here is queen c6. As if the rook goes away, the queen is hanging.
Ooh.
And if you play here bishop g2 to protect the rook one more time,
I know what happens.
there is this key move e4. The interference motive, as the queen got to give up the protection of the rook.
Okay. Poof, yeah, very nice, very nice.
Difficult tactics, but probably it's kind of standard for a lot of Sicilians,
Gotcha.
in which the pawn on d5 will be taken. Anyway, white played here the move g5, which is interesting, but probably not the best move. The idea is that if black would take, you're going to take back with a bishop, and then you have massive pressure on both knights.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if this knight from d5, if it has to go away, also the rook on a8 is hanging. So for one pawn, white is able to exert pressure on the open files, on the knights, on the diagonals. So black didn't really want to take the pawn on g5 and played a much better move, e4. Attacking the queen and reducing the pressure against that knight on d5.
Oh, now it's already boiling, this position here a bit. Yeah,
yeah, definitely. So the queen went away. Queen e2, knight takes e3, queen takes e3, h takes g5, queen takes g5. So now, it's the board is more clear now. It's no longer on fire, but it's still pretty sharp.
Mm-hmm.
As black is a pawn up, white is intending to take the pawn, so black played g6, and white completes its development by putting the bishop on e2. Rooks are connected.
So why not bishop g2?
Yeah, good question. But black will play, normally speaking, the move d5 anyway, and then the bishop is badly placed.
Oh, you're right. Okay. Good point. Yes.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is that black should have played here the move d5 as well. I think that's actually a very, very sensible move. And then the plan is to bring the rook over to d8 to support this pawn. And what you would like to do as black is to activate your knight. So you would like to go knight h5, knight f4. The knight would be excellently placed there. Bishop attacks the queen. But if you do that right away, the pawn on d5 is hanging. That's why the rook is really needed on that square. In that case, black would have a very nice extra pawn, I guess.
Okay.
But it didn't happen. No worries. We are getting an interesting fight very soon, as black instead played here the move queen c6. Mm-hmm. Not really clear what the queen is exactly doing there, but it could be that in case of something like knight d4, you can try to offer the exchange of queens. I think that's one idea.
Yeah, you have a pawn more, so why not exchange the powerful queens? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So white goes h4. Now interesting, because we see the advantage having the bishop on e2. You're trying to get in h5 at some point. Mm-hmm. And basically, you're discouraging black from castling into that direction. Probably it was not the plan anyway to castling kingside any longer. But black decides here to castle queenside.
They did it, yeah. So this is, of course, what's on your mind the whole time, right? Will the king stay there, or will it castle?
But castling queenside in the Sicilian as black, it's always risky, because you're missing your c pawn, and your pawns have advanced as well. And here, Andriasian plays the critical move, c4, opening up the queen side immediately. There's no need to play on the king side any longer.
That's actually a nice move. Yeah, I like it.
With a point that after the pawn was captured, black can, of course, not take the bishop because of rook c1. And the queen is hanging because of the pin. So after capturing once, black instead played here the move d5. Now the pawns are rolling anyway. Bishop goes back to e2. Rook c1 is on the agenda once again, so queen goes away.
Queen
and
goes
now,
away, okay.
Another very interesting move played here by white here is the move rook h3.
Huh.
So one rook is able to move along the first rank, and the other one is looking for a way to become active along the third rank.
Very nice, actually. So for the moment, I prefer white's position.
Yeah, well, actually, it looks very dangerous, and I can tell you there is only one move according to the Silicon Monster, and I'm pretty sure that black didn't even consider it for various reasons, because it's a kind of move which is not fitting with, let's say, the previous numbers of moves played by black.
I see.
And it has to do with the king's safety. And according to the machine, the best move, you have an idea?
Well, is the king actually walking the other side? Is it going to d7 and then to d8?
It's going back to d7. That is the way to go. And apparently, the king is much safer in the center, where it has just the support from its pieces. The pawns are functioning like a nice shield to protect the king.
Barely holding, yeah.
But this is very, very deep and very illogical, considering that black has just castled queenside.
That is super. Yeah, this is so hard to even push through that idea. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Very, very interesting.
The move played in the game is very understandable, as black pushes the pawn to d4, so the pawns are still quite impressive. Yeah. Rook c3 has been prevented with it, but
fearful, yeah.
Rook c1 check.
Mm-hmm.
King went to b8. And now queen e5 check, which is a double attack on the bishop and king.
Yeah.
You cannot block with the bishop on d6, because then the knight is hanging. The bishop blocks the protection of the knight. So the only move here is queen d6 to avoid the loss of material. And this is another critical moment. As what do you think is the best move here? And of course, the viewers should also take their time to come over
absolutely, yeah,
with some idea here.
I hope you stopped the video already a couple of times, because that is quite a fascinating game. So what could be, well, is it actually knight takes d4?
This was played in the game, so you and the top grandmaster, you're thinking alike. It's
oh gosh,
it's an interesting move, dangerous. But it's definitely not the best. I will show you what happened, because after knight takes d4, after queen takes e5, your idea is to go knight c6 and win back the material. So you do get an endgame with even number of pieces and pawns.
That would be perfect, right? If
that's absolutely playable. On the other hand, if we go back to this position, black's king was wide open. So if you compare the safety of kings, it's pretty obvious that white's king is safer. On the other hand, if you keep queens on the board with let's say the most ambitious move, queen a5, you do have chances to keep playing against that king. But probably this was reacted by white, because black can advance the pawn even further with the move d3. The bishop looks as if it's out of play. But now there's another very nice idea by means of knight c5. You're ignoring the bishop, and the point is that if you do take the bishop now,
yeah, you're not allowed to actually, right? Yeah,
it's queen b4, and on the next move you're going to give checkmate on b7 wherever the king goes.
Crazy! What a game you have found again, Robert.
Yeah. Well, they created it. I only have to find it. Yeah. So, well, black doesn't have to capture the bishop. One more line. If you play king a7, for instance, thinking that you're protecting the pawn on a6, anyway, knight takes a6 can be played here, removing that remaining pawn. And if you do take that knight, it's rook c7 with check. And after king goes to b8, you can just take the queen.
Yeah. The pawn cannot do anything because the queen can take the pawn back.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's still a bit tricky, but
It
white should be
is.
technically winning
Yeah.
here for sure. So, well, this
Oh.
is difficult. But on one hand, if you feel like your king is safer, open position, you better avoid the exchange of queens. But understandably, white feared that d pawn. So he went for knight takes d4, queen e5, knight c6. King went away. Knight takes e5,
Uh-huh.
threatening a knight fork on f7. You can defend passively by protecting it, but instead the move played in the game, excellent defense here, is rook d2, attacking the bishop.
But the bishop can also just take on a6 maybe, or
Can take another pawn, which was played in the game. And now the rook comes over to b8. So black is the one taking over the initiative here, threatening to enter with the second rook on the second rank, and that will eventually lead to checkmate with a mating pattern of two rooks on a2 and b2. If you play b3, probably bishop a3 is annoying with an attack on the rook, and there are some sort of checks. It's not looking very pleasant.
Certainly, yeah.
So instead, white played rook b3, offering the exchange of rooks, which happened in the game.
Yeah, I speculated, but then I thought, like, if that happens, which apparently happened, if the rook now takes on f2, out of a sudden, this pawn structure, which was in the middle, which got destroyed effectively by white, now becomes strong again, right?
Right. You can take the pawn on f2. Just what happened in the game is rather than taking the material, black played an even more active continuation with knight d5. Which is very nice. One idea is that if white would take this pawn on f7, which didn't happen in the game, there's bishop f6.
Oh,
threatening to take on b2. If you block with rook c2, there is rook d1. And white should probably go rook c1 and then black can force a repetition, which is, of course, great news for somebody who's more than 500 points lower rated as black.
Very true.
Because you cannot avoid the repetition as king a2 runs into knight b4. That's why it was so important to get a knight involved, because this knight fork ensures material gain.
This knight is mega powerful.
Exactly. So let's see what happened. Rather than taking the pawn, knight c6 was played, as the knight covers the b4 square, so the knight cannot really jump there. Bishop f6 on the board, so the threat to take the pawn on b2 is there. And look what white did. White ignored it by playing rook c5. White is looking for its own chances. Rook takes b2 played.
Yeah, there are some mate patterns, but
for both sides, this is going to be very interesting, as the king doesn't go into the corner. It allows rook c2 with a discovered check, picking up the rook. So king better goes to c1, and now rook a2, attacking the bishop. Which means that if you take the knight, the bishop can be taken, and the endgame is absolutely okay for black.
True.
So white wants to keep the bishop on the board, and it goes to c8. Also a remarkable spot, but the point is that the knight and bishop together, they try to create some sort of mating net.
Yes.
The king cannot really go anywhere. And if white has time, it would probably play rook b5, with the idea of giving either checkmate on b8 with a rook, or with the bishop going to b7.
Oh, you cannot let go of this beautiful pattern. You probably, as white, you think like this has to work. It's so close. I just need one move, and that's it.
So, well, now it's black's turn. Black gave a check.
Yeah.
King goes to d2, rook a2, king e1, and now rook to a1 check. And well, you can go back to d2, and it's leading once again to a repetition of moves. But
you don't
in
want
the game
that.
they follow king e2.
Knight going to f4, right?
My question for you, Arne, and viewers, what do you think? What is black going to play here? This is a very interesting moment.
Yeah, I just said it already. I think if the knight will go to f4, wait, maybe I'm wrong. So the knight goes to f4, the king goes to e3. That is not actually very convincing. What happens if the knight goes? That also doesn't help. Whew. Okay.
I will help you. The white king at this moment almost doesn't have any squares to go to. And try to, with your next move, try to ensure that the king doesn't get any additional squares. I mean, it's very tempting to give a check on f4, but then after king e3, okay, you're just pushing the king to go into the field. And
I see it. Oh no, this is so brutal. And it's really working. It's bishop going to c3.
It's bishop c3, which means that you're ignoring the knight, which can be taken. Actually, it cannot be taken, because if you do so, it's checkmate on e1. Beautiful cooperation of bishop,
goodness.
rook, and pawn.
What
it's
a
checkmate.
mate.
Right. So that cannot be played, but you see, rook e1 is a huge mating threat, and there's not much you can do. If you play the move f3, for instance, so that the king can try to run away, there is rook a2 check, forcing the king to go to the back rank. But now the e-pawn is just coming in. You're threatening to push the pawn. White is pretty much helpless. If you go rook takes d5, it's e2 check.
And the queen is next.
King goes away, and now the bishop supports the e-pawn as well. Like you're promoting with a double check and mate.
Oh goodness.
This is absolute drama.
It is.
White's king all of a sudden was caught in a mating net while he was too busy trying to create a mating net himself. Now his own king is in serious danger, and therefore White had to give up the exchange. Played rook takes c3, and okay, you can of course take, but what happened in the game was actually very clever. Black first gave a check on a2.
To force the king down.
The king cannot go to any of these squares. Should go back, and only now you take on c3. Black has an exchange up, and all White's pawns are weak. Still, you got to convert it. So knight e5 was played. So White's going after this pawn. e3, nice move with the idea that after pawn takes, rook e2 check. King f1, rook takes e3, and White doesn't get the chance to take on f7 because of rook f3. And it's check, and after the king goes away, is rook takes f7, game over.
Clearly, yeah.
Instead, White went with a knight to c4, rook e4, attacking the pawn. White played h5. There was no way to save it.
Trying to split them at least.
Yeah. So White's only hope is trying to get rid of the two remaining pawns, but things are not that simple. I will just go through the next couple of moves. Bishop d3, h4, knight e5, knight d1, b4, f6, hitting the knight, knight d7 check, king c7, knight c5. Of course, don't take this pawn on b4 because of knight a6 with a knight fork. So king c6 first is way more precise. Knight e4. And now Black started to play for tricks. Frankly, I'm not sure this is the best way of playing. But the idea is that if you take, you go rook f3, and once again, it's a double attack.
You know what I thought actually? Oh, okay. God, I would have lost the piece. I thought like I can take the knight on e4.
Oh, no. I see your trick. You were looking for this. And then you have knight f2 check, but you forgot it's a check by the bishop.
Exactly. Oh, that would have been so terrible. And typically also, by the way.
You got to be very precise till the very end.
Yes.
So king g3 played h2. King takes h2. So what Black is doing is basically giving up the pawn voluntarily with the idea to simplify into an endgame. With knight f2, you're forcing the exchange of one set of minor pieces.
Okay, yeah. If you're absolutely sure about this, then
yes. I mean, if you're sure about it, it's fine. I think I would have preferred to keep the h pawn on the board. But b5 played, king b6. So now the knights were exchanged. King g3, rook d2, attacking the bishop. Bishop got to keep the pawn defended. Bishop f1, rook d4. Very nice technical move as you're cutting off the king,
Uh-huh.
not giving white a chance to reach the pawn on f6.
Poof.
King f3, king
Not
c5.
not easy, I have to say. I would be struggling a lot, I guess.
You're absolutely in control, but as I will show you, there are a few more moments in which black got to be very, very careful and precise. So the f-pawn is coming forward. King c3, rook d4. And okay, the b-pawn cannot really run. If you go b6, there's rook d6. And after b7 is rook b6, you're in control again. The pawn is going to be lost, as otherwise the f-pawn is going to be pushed. So white played bishop e2, king e4. Now the king comes in, bishop f3.
Yes.
Tricky move. If you take, it's king takes d4, and it's going to be in both pawns are going to be queening at the same time. So king e3 is the way to go. King is doing well here. Bishop c6, rook d1. This is also a very precise move. With the point, if b6, you go rook c1, and you're picking up the bishop next. So white played king c4. And this is, for instance, one interesting moment in which you cannot think, okay, I'm just going to push my pawn now. Because that allows bishop takes f3.
And that's also a draw again, right?
Giving up the bishop for the pawn, and I will show you one line now.
Yes.
The black king is too far away. After rook b1, king c5, king e4, king c6, king e5, b7, king e6, king c7, and b8 queen is the threat. If you go rook c1, you just go away with the king, and this is going to be a draw. So that was some sort of final defensive attempt white was looking for. But instead, rook c1 is very clever because the king got to choose where to go. If you play king b4, which was not played in the game, now you can play the move f3, with a big difference that if white's going to give up the bishop now, it will be much easier for the king to approach the pawn.
Because the pawn cannot move forward anymore because of a check on b1.
b7 is rook b1, indeed. And if you walk with your king, the king comes, and b7, rook b1, check, king a6, king c6, and black just wins on one tempo.
So brutal.
It is very brutal.
Chess is a brutal game, I heard. Yeah.
Definitely. And therefore king d5 was played. The king tries to stay in the center to shoulder the opponent's king, but now it obstructs the path of the bishop. f3 played, king d6, f2, black is faster. Bishop g2, controlling the square, hoping once again that f1 queen will be played, because then you give up the bishop and it's once again going to be a draw. But very precise move now, king f4. With the idea that after b6, the king comes to g3, attacking the bishop. And the bishop doesn't have a way to stay on the diagonal. If you go for the move b7, you go rook b1. You're not going to take the bishop, you just control the enemy's pawn first. And, bishop is hanging, so white doesn't have time to play king c7. His king takes g2. And in case of bishop f1, hoping for something like rook takes f1 and then b8 queen, there are perpetual check ideas for the queen. Actually, what's funny is, if black is going to play rook d1 here, with check, you can play king e6 with a counter check. So there's not even time for black to promote a pawn. But anyway, after this move bishop f1, keep it simple. Just eliminate the dangerous passed pawn, and that's going to be game over.
Yeah.
So the bishop got a move. Bishop e4 was played, attacking the rook. You may just promote a pawn.
Exactly. Yeah, it is possible, I guess. Yeah.
But what is a simpler way of handling the situation?
Can you just take the pawn on b7? Is that
exactly?
Yeah, right?
You take the pawn, and after bishop takes, you get a queen. This was played on for a few more moves, but bishop versus a queen is just dead lost for white.
There's no chance for the bishop to hold tight.
You bring the king, and you'll try to create some sort of zugzwang where the bishop got to move far away.
Yeah.
You give a check, and then it's queen c1, and the bishop was eventually taken. Incredible, yeah?
Wow.
Somebody more than 500 points lower rated player outclassed in the end. I mean, the Grandmaster was pushing a little too hard, but I thought it was a very well-deserved win and a lot of interesting moments with it.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely enjoyable. Well done for finding this. Guys, if you like watching the Underdog as much as I do, you probably also enjoy Robert's other content. He has made loads of Fritz trainers, and he has his own YouTube channel, which you probably already are aware of. So I put the link in the last episode already, and just check out his YouTube channel. You get plenty of very recent events and very interesting things. You'll learn a lot with Robert, as always. Thanks a lot, Robert. This was great.
Thanks a lot, Arne. It was very pleasant to do this game together with you.
Absolutely. We see each other for the next Underdog. Bye
All
bye.
right, take care. Bye bye.